Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Samantha, and I am the webinar lead at Advice Chaser. Before we introduce our guests and get started, I need to do a bit of legal housekeeping. Advice Chaser, the host of this webinar, is not a registered investment advisor. We cannot and do not give financial advice. Today's presentation is for educational purposes only and cannot be considered advice for any person's individual situation. Advice Chaser regularly hosts informative webinars, such as this one, featuring a variety of knowledgeable professionals, many of whom are licensed advisors. Any opinions, ideas, jokes, or principles expressed by presenters are their own, and however true, funny, or interesting are not endorsed by Advice Chaser. Please do not act on the information you hear today without consulting a qualified financial professional. And with that, we're thrilled to bring you this educational presentation. Attendees are muted, but we encourage you to ask questions using the chat box. The presenters will answer those queries during or after the webinar today as appropriate. If you ask a question in the chat box, go ahead and leave your phone number as well. If we can't get to your question during the event, we'll make sure somebody reaches out to you after today's event. We want this experience to be as educational as possible, so please do not hesitate to ask for clarification or expansion on the material at hand. And with that, I'd like to introduce to you today's presenter. J.R. Guerrieri is a certified financial planning practitioner that utilizes a unique approach and methodology called financial life planning. Life planning connects the dots between our financial realities and the lives we long to live. This method is based on the premise that advisors should first discover a client's most essential goals in life before formulating a financial plan. So a client's finances fully support those goals. As a lifelong learner, musician, and athlete, JR holds a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, trains Muay Thai, and has been playing the guitar for over 30 years. He actively performs and writes music in his band. And with that, I transition to you, JR.
Hello, everyone. Okay, so today we're going to discuss financial planning for college or college planning. Very complicated topic. It's not so simple. I wish it was simple, where it was just like, oh, I'll save a bunch of money, and by the time I get to the certain age, I'll have all this money saved up for college. But it's a way more complicated conversation, and we're going to go into all the some of the aspects of it. Yeah, I think that getting the conversation started around college planning is really important for anybody who's in this situation. And there's a lot of great professionals out in the marketplace that can help you get this. Not only are they financial planners, but they're also people who assist people in getting children into the college of their choice. All right, so next slide. Okay, so the cost of college. Some of the most important things we want to know is the tuition that you pay, which is rather large. It's the fees that we pay, the books, the living expenses, what we call room and board. Do they live on campus? Do they live off campus? In-state versus out-of-state tuition, right? So what some states do is they sort of incentivize you to go to their state's university by giving you some sort of rebate on the price, whereas if you go out of state, it could be more. That's not true across all institutions, but sort of like why we separate in-state versus out of state. And then there's all different kinds of universities that we can go to, right? It's the traditional four-year college, which then turns into some sort of advanced program or master's program or something. There's the technical schools, which are they are, I believe, right now really rising in popularity. It's getting back to like basics in our society of like, okay, we need technical people as well. Junior colleges and online colleges is obviously another big one. Online colleges, I'm hearing now, I'm an old man now, but like, you could basically get an entire, four-year degree online and never actually step foot in any university, which is, kind of amazing if you think about it. And so the impact of inflation on college costs. So this is a big thing, right? So in the last year, we've been inundated with the concept of inflation, right? All the things that we buy have gotten more expensive. Our food's got more expensive. Our housing's got more expensive. Our gasoline has gotten more expensive. And it's just been a very big topic of conversation. And it's important, that conversation, because inflation is one of the most damaging, like factor erosion, finance, like wealth erosion factor that there is, right? And so in college planning, right? So I'll give you an example. For the last 20, 30 years, when, you know, the Fed tries to keep inflation at like a 2 to 3% rate, right? 2 to 3, right? So the price of things goes up by 2% to 3% every year. Well, with college, if you look back, like, you know, last 10, 15, 20 years, 30 years, the rate of inflation is like 6%, right? So, you know, triple that. So it's like the cost of college is constantly rising. So, you know, planning for this thing is so imperative, because you just don't want to run the risk of, like, you know, one of the things that I discuss with people is running the risk of, you know, poor planning for college could be detrimental to your own personal finance if you're a parent, right? You don't want to go broke, or you don't want to ruin your retirement because of the cost of your kids going to school. So, you know, that's why we talk about these things. Okay, next slide. Okay, so there's all kinds of savings vehicles. Some get more popular than others in the conversation, and for certain reasons, right? So one of the biggest ones out there is a 529 plan. ESAs and UGMA accounts are sort of like they're all basically the concept of me, the parent, contribute money to this specific account in the name of my child or my grandchild, in order for them to use it for college tuitions. And there's certain tax advantages that come along with it, especially with the 529 plan. So the 529 plan says this, right? It says, I am going to contribute dollars into an investment vehicle, and this investment vehicle is going to grow over time, right? And so if you have your own personal investment vehicles, you'll know that as you invest in these things over long periods of time, every year, you'll be buying and selling certain stocks or bonds. And what happens is you get a bill called a capital gains or a tax bill every year for any like changes to that portfolio. And that like reduces your overall growth over time, right? So with a 529 plan, the tax incentive in this is you put the money into it, the money will grow. And then when you pull the money out of it, any growth that you have had, no matter how significant it is or not, right, you get to receive those dollars tax free, as long as the dollars are for college expenses, right? And specific college expenses, not every expense, right? Not like, you know, party money, right? But like, you know, the tuition and the books and things like that. So I think that the bullet point of importance of early financial planning is you want to start to set these things up right away, like the strategies you're going to use, because, you know, with compounding interest and things growing slowly over time, which they tend to do, right? There's you know, you won't need to save as much money early on, and you can start to maneuver and sort of go in and out of different financial tools or products, right? Like, so on here that's not listed, right, that is really powerful is like, can we use real estate as a tool? Can we use other financial products can we borrow money from like certain financial products that we have, right? I'm going into like some more like complicated strategies with these words, but you need to know that they're out there, right? It's like there's certain tax shifting, income shifting strategies out there. There's insurance products that we can utilize. So like there's all kinds of financial tools out there to save for college strategically. You need to know them all. You need to be educated on them all, right? There's no way in today's conversation I'm going to be able to go through all of them, but like just to give you some hints as to like, you know, some of the things that are out there. Yeah, you can go to the next slide.
Before we go to the next slide, I do have a question from chat.
Mhm.
Does having a 529 account prevent children from getting scholarships, grants, or other financial aid?
So okay, that you can't just say yes or no to that question, right? So I can say yes and I can say no, right? So here's how you do that. So when a child goes into college and the parent wants to see if they are qualified to get need-based or merit-based money, right? They're two distinct factors, right? Need-based meaning like financially they need the money because they're in a financial position that requires assistance, right? And then merit-based, meaning like the merit of the child provides them with like the skills of the child, right? What the positioning of the child makes them desirable to the institution, right? So when you fill out a form called the FAFSA form, which is coming up on another slide, it asks you, do you have a 529 plan, right? And so if the answer is yes, and you tell them how much is in the account, well, that means that the more money you have, the less need they have, and the more money the parent is required to provide, because you have the money, you have the necessities to pay the bill. So we're not going to give you the money, right? The college is not going to give it to you. However, there is a world of college planning that if you strategically position your child, no matter how much wealth you have, the institution will give you money or lower the cost of college, or give you grants or free aid because they want your child and you can be wealthy. So there's now, if you just follow a traditional method of like college planning, which is like, put all your money into a 529 and go try to get your kid in the best college in the country. Yeah, you're probably not going to get a lot of money, right? But if you start using strategy where like you start positioning your child to be in the best, like most desirable position, there are ways to get lots of money from institutions. So the answers to the question is yes and no. And to go into a deeper conversation with that is like, we're talking like hours of conversation. So I can't, like, it would just take too much time to go into that. So the answer is yes and no. Okay. Financial aid options. So there's where I was talking about before, right? Needs-based versus merit-based financial. You're welcome. Needs-based versus merit-based financial aid. Scholarships and grants is kind of what we're looking for as parents, right? These are dollars given to us or to the child, that is, to go to school, and they don't need to be paid back. That's powerful stuff right there. That's what we're looking for. And I keep using the term, and I'm going to use a lot, like positioning the child, the student positioning to be desirable to go to that university. Work study opportunities are another great tool, right? I remember going to school and in college, and like a lot of the friends I had were doing these work study programs. These are great, where you work and go to school at the same time, and there's compensation for that. The FAFSA is a form. Okay, so free application for federal student aid. So this is a form that everybody should fill out. Everyone. It doesn't matter if you're a billionaire or if you make no money. All right, fill out the form, because it is the tool you use that will allow you to determine how much aid you do get, whether you're going to get, there's two kinds of aid, right? The needs-based that we see there, or the merit-based, but you need the application to get merit-based aid as well, even though you're not going to get any needs-based. Pell Grants, and then student loans. So student loans is a whole nother topic. We're going to touch on it in a little bit. But a loan to your child goes, could either be to you for your child or to your child themselves. There's a whole, that's a whole complicated situation, but yeah, student loans is another tool that we have to get people to fund this transaction. So next slide. Student loans and repayment strategies. Okay, so typically there's two kinds of loans out there, federal and private. Federal meaning like, the government provides it, all right, and then private meaning like there's institutions out there that will lend, their smaller private institutions, and between them you're going to have different sort of payback choices, right? You have different rates, where interest rates. So the interest rate, for those of you who don't know, most of you do, is like the how much more you have to pay back on top of the loan itself. All different kinds of repayment terms, right? So you can make a payment based on how much money you're making. Like if you have a student loan, you're 22 years old and you're making $40,000 a year, they're not going to ask a lot of money for you to pay back the loan right away. Right. So whereas if you're making, $500,000 a year, they're probably going to make you pay back more money faster, right? Because you can handle it. So they give you these like different strategies for how you pay back your loan. And then loan forgiveness programs, right? So if you go into certain professions or certain sort of like it's like almost like a contract between you and the person providing you the loan, you and the company providing you the loan, and they will forgive the loan after a certain period of time or a certain kind of service, right? So there's all kinds of loan forgiveness programs out there, and you want to be aware of what they are, what depending upon even like the job that you decide to choose, right? Whether you go work for a certain kind of institution, or a private institution versus a public institution, and you can get loan forgiveness. Yes, responsible borrowing and managing student loan debt is it's tough because there are people that just need the money while they're there, right? So it's it's just you do what you can, and then other things is if you have the ability to pay some of that interest back or pay some of that principal back, managing your own personal debts is advisable for sure. And like I said, all different kinds of repayment strategies and loan consolidation options. There's something called, so a lot of people, what they do when I do financial planning with them personally, they got their job, they're making money and they're saving money. What I often do is bring in an expert team that really knows the ins and outs of student loans. This is what they do for a living. And a lot of times what happens is they give them the students who are paying back the loans, now they're not students, now they're working, all these different refinancing options, right? If I had a loan paying, that I was paying 10% on, that I can refinance and get it down to 5%, or I can extend the time I'm going to be in the loan, which kind of sounds not so fun, but at the same time, it also lowers the payment and help you get on your feet and start saving money for yourself. So there's all kinds of different repayment strategies out there, refinancing, all kinds of companies do it. There's some famous websites you can go to see different aspects of that as well. Okay, next slide. Okay, so how an advisor can help. From the position of saving, okay, for a parent saving for their child, right? What you want to do, and we're going to do an exercise at the end when I get through the rest of the slides, but you really want to start thinking about, okay, I want to assist my child in paying for this payment, right? So how much can I dedicate is the first thing, right? How much can I dedicate per month? And I typically want people thinking on a monthly basis, their personal budget, right? The earlier you start, the more money you're going to build up over time, right? And the less money you're going to need to come out of pocket every month. The later you start, the more money that you're going to have to contribute out of your own pocket. And then with the other conversation you want to have with your spouse or whoever is helping you make these decisions is how much of a student loan do I want the child to have? Remember, the loan is theirs, right? And so some people view this as a step into the world of responsibility. Now they have a loan, now they got to pay it back, and they got to learn how to budget. And so some parents love the concept of giving their kid a loan so that they can start learning what it means to pay it back. Other people go the opposite direction. You go, no, I don't want this child to have any financial responsibility to their education and anything in between. So I think that the conversation between you, whoever's making these decisions, your financial professional, how do you want to pay for this and save for this over time matters, right? You don't want to not be able to retire just so that your kid can go to college either, right? It's you don't want to, the only thing you're saving money for is this college thing. So, I mean, there's a lot of ways of looking at this. And that's what I mean by prioritize how college savings should fit into your overall plan. And then the last thing on how an advisor can help, right? Advisors have business relationships with other experts, right? There are experts in this world that are going to help catapult you into the right schools. Now, this is important. So people don't understand that there are 3,000 universities across this country, 3,000. Okay. Now, they don't all have the same criteria for inviting students into their university or attracting students into their university. Now, you got to understand something. So the college world is a business, and businesses in our society are there to perform, make money, and do good things, right? So, but the key is it's a business, right? And so, In business, it's sales, for lack of a better word, right? And so so you are getting into a business relationship with this institution. So what's going to attract your child to that institution matters, right? And so some institutions really focus heavily on the SAT score. Some focus very heavily on the grade point average of the student from high school. Some focus on the athleticism. Some focus on extracurricular activities. Some just focus on, like, you know, who's done charitable work or who has a focus on, you know, filling. So like the spectrum for the criteria for where a student is most desirable matters. And so what there are great experts in the world. What will help you do is start to take the 3,000 universities and then filter down from 3,000 to the 50 or 60 that your child is best suited for. And when I say best suited for is, where are they going to get the most exciting education? Not where you want them to go to school, or where, you know, the news media wants you to go to school, or what's the most popular school in the state. That's not college planning. College planning is finding the school that matches perfectly with your child and what they are trying to achieve in this world. And believe me, you can filter down, and then also you'll discover that your child is in, what you're trying to do really is you want your child to be in the top 25% of desirableness from that institution. Now, every institution across the country will tell you every year on their website where their students fell into the different categories of SATs and the GPAs, right? So you don't have to have like the perfect performing student. You just want them to be in the top 25% of what other students in that college have done like the year before. And then what happens is, if they are in that top 25%, then you want to start doing your research, right? You want to see, oh, can I get interviews? Can I talk to people at the registrar's office of where they, you know, bring kids in, right? And find out, what are they looking for? Is my child a right fit, right? Is their extracurricular activities the right fit? And so there's a lot of responsibility on the parent early on in the high school years of the child to start getting them ready, right? Like I tell my clients, you know, you want to be doing SAT prep, right? And like extracurricular activity prep, like all that stuff needs to go starting in the first freshman year of high school. And that the process starts then. You don't wait until the last week to do it. So that's really important. Okay, next slide. All right, so that's the last slide. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to share my screen and just kind of give you guys like a sort of a taste of, oh, like this. Obviously, it's going to be way more complicated than what I'm doing here, right? But this is a good way to get people. I just want people to get a sense of like what these things cost. Samantha, this is good for the visual, right? You can see it.
Yep, I see everything perfect.
All right, so we're going to use we'll call the first person my name, JR. Okay, and let's assume that I have a child that was born on January 1st of 2022. So a year ago. Okay, and I am going to assume that I've already contributed so far for the first year. So let's say, you know, I don't know, $5,000 into a 529 plan. And I did good, and I have about 20 grand sitting in an investment account. Taxable just means a taxable investment account, which is, you know, like not a 401k, not a Roth IRA, just a taxable investment account. And I hit next, and we assume that the child is going to be 18 years old, and they're going to go to school for 4 years. Okay, now, so you can see here it says select a college cost, and the software. So this is a software program. So let me just take a step back. Go ahead right now, any one of you, after the call, after the meeting, Google college calculator, and college planning calculator. And you're going to get just like lists of calculators out there, right? This one I'm using is through a company called Money Guide Pro. This is designed specifically for financial planners, right? I pay money for this thing. So you're probably not going to find this one online. But all financial planners have some kind of tool that they use, but there's no reason why you can't get the same easy information from a free online calculator. Okay, so select the college cost. So I've clicked this drop down box. And you can see here, I got a public in-state 4 years, public out-of-state, all these different kinds, an average of them all is 35,000. If I do a 4-year private, it's 57,000. So like, different kinds of schools have different things. 45,000 public out-of-state school, right? And look at that, inflate at 6%. So the software already knows that the inflation rate for the cost of tuition is going up around 6%. So let's just plan for that, right? That makes a lot of sense. But I can make anything you want. And then of course I could see here, it says I could find a specific college and get the exact value of the tuition of that school. Okay, so the cost of college is going to be $45,000 per year for 4 years. We can assume some sort of grant or scholarship, like $10,000 a year if I want, or amount that I borrow, right? But we're just gonna leave these all zero for now. And so I'm gonna have to pay $45,000 per year. Okay, now the next thing, target portfolio. So when you go and prepare for college, you have to invest the dollars. I mean, that's like typically the best thing to do, right? And so how do you invest dollars? Do you invest fairly aggressively, right? If I move it all the way to the right, that's aggressive. We can expect a nice 7.2% return. And what this means is if you were an aggressive portfolio in the back of the year 2007, 2009, your portfolio dropped by half, 50% in that time frame. So be ready for that kind of thing, right? Whereas if I'm a low risk person, I'm only going to get 4% a year. And then, but when the market fell in 2007, you only lost 3% for that year, right? So there's all different. We could just go aggressive now for the sake of conversation. Okay, so real simple. The calculator said that you need to save $9,676 into a 529 plan, okay? And that will get you 100% paid for the entire college tuition paid for by you, right? And so it's asking you how much can you save. So of the 9,000, if I can save, $500 a month, right, or $6,000, that's all I can do, okay? Then you can see here, I'll get 70% of this thing paid for myself. And then the rest of the money is going to have to come from somewhere else. That's what that means. If I could pay the whole thing, wonderful. I got all the tuition paid for. So it's kind of like, this is a nice little tool to say, well, I can contribute $200 a month to a certain plan. And we can see, well, I only got a year and a half of that thing covered. Now down here, I can hit edit options, right? And now I can start to mess around with things, right? So let's pretend for a second that I was the kind of parent that said, you know what? I think that the child should contribute half, right? I'll go half in and they go half in. Okay, so now the student borrows half the money, and then I put in the $200 a month or whatever I'm going to put in, and then we almost have the whole thing paid for. If I can do $300 a month, right? It's 80. Almost all of it's covered, right? And so I can play around with numbers and see, how close am I going to be to, and there's all kinds of different bells and whistles I could play with to give you guys a conceptualize, how much money to save over time. So I wanted you guys to see that. And then here we go. You can see, here's me saving money over time, right? And then here's the money coming out in green. And there you go. And that's sort of like a nice, I can create a fancy report right here for you. And then there's just some other things I wanted to show you. Sam, you're good? Good?
Yep, we're good. I did want to bring light to a question in chat.
Sure.
We have Pete who asks, what happens to the funds in the 529 plan if your child doesn't go to college? So
yeah,
they choose not to go.
Yeah, so unfortunately, you've put money into a tool that if the kid doesn't go to school and you start removing money out of the account, you will be faced with taxes that you've never paid. You owe those now. And there's a potential for a penalty. And the potential penalty is 10% of the amount of money you've removed from the account at any given time. So that's unfortunate. And so that's why alternative form, see, if you don't have a clue as to what your future beholds, you have to plan like that. That's important. See, like if we lived in a perfect world and we knew our kid was going to go to school and everybody's kid on the planet did that, right? well, then everyone put their money in a 529 plan because it's perfect for that, right? But if you're not sure, then why would you put all your money into one thing and not, and like there's a possibility that your child just doesn't go to school? Why would you want to pay 10% penalty on it, right? So yes, it can be transferred to another child down the road for sure, or a grandchild. So as long as you leave it in there, it's fine. But yeah, so alternative methods of and saving for your kid's tuition is powerful, right? Like one of the things I say about like real estate is like, if your children are young, right, and you have a desire, and I'm not telling people to do this, but if you've always had a desire to invest in real estate, right, and you get a piece of rental real estate, like you create an Airbnb or something, and that thing generates, $1,000 a month for you in rental income, which would be fantastic for anyone. Well, now you just have a cash flow. That's 12 grand a year that you can dedicate now towards the college tuition. That's a powerful investment right there. So there's certain insurance policies that you can invest into and borrow money from the cash inside of an insurance policy that you can borrow the money out. You can borrow money against your so borrowing is a nice way of like avoiding taxes. So when you borrow against things, sometimes you avoid taxes, not all the time, but sometimes. So like you can borrow against assets. Like if I have an investment portfolio, I can borrow against it, right? If I have an insurance policy, I can borrow against it. If I have a piece of real estate, I can borrow against it. And so these are ways in which I can keep the asset, not liquidate it, and then use the asset as a means for paying for tuition and avoid taxes along the way. Another thing I just wanted to show in terms of like, a way to solve the financial, the essentially the formula is, assuming that this is just another calculator I have in my like toolbox, if you will, right? If I have $10,000 today and I know I need $150,000 for this tuition, and I assume I can earn 5%, over the course of 16 years, I know I need to save at least $5,000 a year to achieve that 150,000. This is a very crude and like simple calculation, but it gets you thinking about these kinds of things. And then I have another calculator here that does the same thing, right? If I have $10,000 today and I have a 1-year-old, I'm going to go to 18, right? And I save annual payment, meaning I save 5,000 a year, assuming that I invest in large cap stocks, or I can invest in all these different things here. And assuming that I'm going to use history as a method to tell me what the rate of return was. And you can see here, I got the rates of returns from the year 2001, moving forward 18 years, right? I can see like how my account would have grown over time, right? And I could do all kinds of things. Like I could look at, management fees and expenses and taxes, and I could take taxes out of the account. But the point is I'll have 200 grand, most likely have 200 grand if like history repeated itself, assuming I could earn that, it looks like here I earned about 7.98%. So like, these are like tools that I get people thinking about, like, okay, this is how much money I have to have, how much money I need to save in order to have a certain amount of money in the future. So yeah, there's all kinds of calculators out there and tools that you use, and a lot of conversation around this. There's some great books written on college planning. Yeah, I would say this is a good place to sort of stop and see if anybody has questions.
Yep, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the chat and we're happy to address those. Alternatively, you can also raise your hand and we can ask you to come off mute to ask them directly. Well, With that, I think we can go to outros. If you do have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, include your phone number and your email address, and we're happy to address them later with you. Or if you happen to get that before we finish the webinar, we can address those with JR. Okay. So on behalf of Advice Chaser, we want to thank JR today for and working with us to bring you this webinar. Thank you so much for attending, and look for an email soon with a link to the replay of this event. You're welcome to share that replay with your friends or family. Here at Advice Chaser, we are all about helping you find a financial advisor who is a great fit for your life and your financial questions. Our matching service is free to you, and every one of our advisor partners has committed to offer a free initial consultation to anyone we introduce them to. Find out more by going to advicechaser.com and clicking on the link to find an advisor. Once again, from Advice Chaser, thank you for coming, and we'll see you at another webinar soon.
Thanks, everyone.